are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke McKenna, but today's case, we're going to be looking into what really happened to Tanner Ward. Was it murder or suicide? There were lots of questions surrounding his disappearance, but even more once they found his body. I mean, the investigators believe one thing where his family believes another, and it seems much more complicated than the investigators want it to appear. So that's what we're going to be looking into today. And since it is such a recent case, I do want to say that I am sharing Tanner's story to hopefully help in this investigation, or just to bring light to what happened to him, not to bring any disrespect to him or his family. Now let's get back to the story. So it was 2017 in Trenton, Missouri, and Tanner Ward was a 19-year-old born on September 7th, 1997. He had some turbulent teenage years, but in 2017 he was really coming into himself, and he was a genuinely happy, good soul who would even had a soon-to-be fiancé named Megan and a little baby named Sophia. He seemed to be really happy with his life and where he was at 19 years old, but on the night of June 7th, everything would change. You see, he went out to meet a friend named Jeremiah. That's what he told his mother, because his mother had asked, I'm making grilled chicken and a salad. Would you like me to save you one or make you one? Are you going to be home in time? And he said, yeah, it'll only be about 30 minutes. Go ahead and make me one and I'll be back. But in fact, he never came back. He never came home that night or the next morning, and for it being such a small, close-knit town, it was really concerning that Tanner's family did not really know who Jeremiah was. So Kelsey, his sister, Tanner's sister, decided to find out where this Jeremiah lived on her own. And so Kelsey kind of asked around town and finally got Jeremiah's address and decided to go over there herself to see if possibly they were there still the next morning and had just fallen asleep. So she went over and she knocked on the door, and nobody answered, but she found that the door was unlocked, and so she let herself in. When she went inside Jeremiah's home, she found that it was a complete disaster. The furniture was overturned, there was a hole in the wall, the back door was open, yet Jeremiah nor Tanner were there. And that is when Kelsey would see something that would make her even more worried. And that was the fact that her brother Tanner's baseball cap was amongst this mess. And that is something that Tanner never went anywhere without. Without a second thought, Kelsey went ahead and took this ball cap to the police station and told them everything she had seen, and that she was very concerned for her brother and where he was. And the police department at this point, because he was 19, and like they do with most teenagers, told her that he was probably a runaway, that he was probably out with some girl blowing off steam, and that he'd be back. Now, Kelsey knew this wasn't true, and his whole family knew that this was the farthest from the truth. He would never do that to his fiancée, and he wouldn't just run away like this anyways. And so Kelsey took it into her own hands and decided to make the missing posters herself. And these read that 19-year-old Tanner Ward, at 6'2" and 165 pounds, with brown eyes and brown hair, was missing. He had last been seen wearing a gray American Eagle shirt with an A&E logo, dark blue skinny jeans and black Vans, and a blue KC hat, which basically it stood for Kansas City. He had a wart on his middle finger knuckle, as well as a sailboat tattoo on the outer side of his right hand. A few weeks had gone by now with very little involvement from the police, and it was really all on Kelsey, she felt, to get the word out that Tanner was missing. She was putting missing posters up everywhere, and that's when she would run into this Jeremiah. And as soon as he got out of his truck, Kelsey knew that something was very wrong. She had a gut instinct, because he was wearing what appeared to be what her brother had last been seen in, his shirt. And when she got closer, she noticed that there was 4 marks that almost looked like cigarette burn marks on his shirt. Jeremiah simply stated that these were stains, and when Kelsey threatened to call the police, he said that he would meet her there at the police station, and so they went. and Jeremiah was actually there, but he kind of refused to give the police his shirt or any information. After much coaxing, he finally did give his shirt up to the police, and the investigators found that these marks actually appeared to be blood stains, that they could be blood, but once they tested it, it couldn't really be confirmed. But there was another test that they wanted to run on Jeremiah himself, a voice stress test, which this test records a human voice using a microphone, and based on the low frequency of the voice, technology uses that to test the physiological and psychological stress of the voice and the state of the speaker to find if there is any deception. And when Jeremiah did this, they found deception. Because of this, police decided to search Jeremiah's property, or more so his dad's property, in Edinburgh, which was 11 miles from Trenton. They brought cadaver dogs to this home, and these dogs immediately honed in on a burn pit. So the police decided to go to this area and dig a hole that was 6 feet wide, 10 feet long, and basically as deep as they could go. And what they found was what appeared to be bones. But upon further testing, it was actually only animal bones. And their only lead at this point was a dead end. There were rumors floating around at this time, one saying that they had overheard other people saying that Tanner would never be found because he was already dead. Another said that he had last been in Galt, which was actually 19 miles the other way from Edinburgh, where he said he was going to meet Jeremiah. It was 19 miles the other way. And it was in this building, but it's not ever, I couldn't find anything that said whether police went and searched this area or not. It was 6 months later now, and the people of the community had searched high and low, every possible spot in this town, and nobody had seen or heard anything from Tanner. That was until December 4th, when they would find his body. 2 high school students who were childhood friends of Tanner's were actually walking in a wooded area in Shanklin Avenue when there was a gust of wind that caused a tree to kind of creak over their head, and they looked up where they would see a body hanging from this 25 feet tall tree over a grain elevator. These students immediately called the police, and when investigators got there, they noticed how badly the body was decomposed. The fingers were mummified and the feet were missing. This meant that the body was even harder to get an identification on. But this tree was only 3 blocks from Tanner's home. Now there was shoes and pants and a sock found right underneath the tree, and appeared to have been there for quite a while. The autopsy was then done on this body, and through dental records it was confirmed that it was in fact Tanner Ward. But what was even more heartbreaking was that his death was being ruled a suicide. Now his family did not believe this whatsoever. The only injuries that the coroner could find was from his neck, as if he had hung himself. And the family knew that there was no way that a suicide would have ever been a possibility for Tanner. Not only was he on the right track, he was so genuinely happy he never had those thoughts, and he was making future plans. His mother knew without a doubt he had been killed, and the messages they received after he was found would even confirm that further to them. They were harsh, but they definitely hinted at murder or foul play of some sort. These messages were saying that Tanner had been hung from a well or a fruit cellar and tortured for 4 months, and unfortunately he had died. The investigators believed that these were all just false rumors or theories, but there was one thing that they couldn't really explain that some people were coming forward with that made it seem very strange, and it was that his body appeared to have been moved from one location to another. Because you see, Tanner's body was mummified when they found it, and that comes from either extreme cold or lack of moisture, and most often you wrap something up to actually get it to get in this mummified state. This was first used by ancient Egyptians who would wrap up these bodies and get their mummies. And if Tanner was out in this weather just hanging in the tree for 6 months, when the weather in Missouri was rainy, there were thunderstorms, lots of moisture in the air, how was he mummified? And why did it appear that bugs and birds had been nowhere near his body, even though he had been outside, perfect for them to come and attack? And why were his feet missing? A witness then came forward saying that he worked at a construction site 25 feet away from this tree and had never seen Tanner hanging there besides the day he was found. This witness said that they could see the tree from where they worked and they never saw anything or smelt anything, because obviously it's going to smell horrible. Several others also came forward claiming that they'd played under that tree, or their kids had several times, and had never seen anything. Now, a lot of people believed that Tanner's murder, or what some believed was murder, Tanner's death, had something to do with what happened a year prior to his disappearance in 2016. You see, even Tanner's friends and family will say that back in 2016 he was doing drugs, and he even got felony probation for a home invasion where he went inside for a drug deal and held people at gunpoint. By 2017, with his new baby girl, Tanner was really getting his life back on track, but did his past come back to haunt him? It was found that Jeremiah's upstairs neighbor was a woman named Stephanie Miller, whose daughter was one of the people held at gunpoint by Tanner and his brother. And some messages sent to the family said that Stephanie Miller had tortured him, and it was only supposed to be a torture or a payback for what he had done to her daughter. But when Tanner fought back, they murdered him instead. Crime Watch Daily actually interviewed Stephanie Miller, and she didn't go on camera, but she did send in a statement that said, "I don't know anything about what happened to Tanner. I'm not really sure exactly why or what their opinions are based on. It is important to me for this family to know I had nothing to do with this." But Stephanie was never interrogated at all in this case, was never looked into at all, I don't believe. And the family of Tanner ordered a second autopsy to be done, but I couldn't find anything that said that anything else was found, leading me to believe they couldn't find any more evidence that it was a murder. And there was also indentation on the tree branch that Tanner had been hanging from that showed that he had been there for a while, as well as his neck had kind of stretched out as it would, hanging there with gravity pulling you down for all that time, which indicated he had been there for a long time. People said that it could have just looked like a branch that was hanging that nobody really looked at. However, because Tanner was mummified and in this state, there would be so much evidence that would be lost, and this could have possibly been staged. Overall, investigators claim that it was a definite suicide, whereas the family believes that he was killed. One thing that I keep going back to is his feet. Why were they missing? Where did they go? He would have needed them to get there, to get up in the tree to do that. And if they fell off, or even he cut them off, why would they not be anywhere around? I guess that there is a possibility that they had fallen off and then an animal carried them off to eat, but it just seems like a very strange factor. Also, a great theory that I read for why there was an indentation in the tree was that if whoever put him there to stage this as a suicide threw a rope over the tree branch and then used that as leverage to pull his body up, that would have left the same indentation as well, or it could have. And as far as why his neck was so stretched, was he possibly hung somewhere else like a well, and then they moved his body to this tree and he would still have had that same effect, that it looked like he had been hanging there, because he had been hanging, just not there. Overall, if he was there the whole time, okay, maybe nobody saw him, but wouldn't they smell him just walking up? And do you believe that Jeremiah had anything to do with it, or possibly Stephanie Miller? I definitely think that they could have been working together, and the fact that Jeremiah was so hesitant about even giving them his shirt says a lot. This one really broke my heart because it seems like investigators wanted this to be a super simple closed case when they found the body, but I think that it is anything but and deserves to be looked into far more than it has been. I'd love to hear if you think that this was a murder or suicide down below, as well as why. But if you do have any information regarding this case, please come forward. Any small tip can help. And please call the Trenton Police Department at 660-359-5557. Don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay? Bye.